the campaign, the party withdrew its support. It was a miscalculation that was to cost the rebels dearly.
La gente, por temor a los militares, se ocultaban y no les ayudaban de ninguna manera, ya no les querían proveer ni con víveres ni con nada, ¿no? Y ya en ese momento se vieron más abandonados y más traicionados de la gente.
As the campaign developed, it became obvious that the political groundwork had not been laid by Guevara. He'd always argued that no revolution could succeed without popular support, yet he'd failed to enlist a single peasant. In February 1967, Guevara made another serious error. Though the rebels had gone to great lengths to enter Bolivia undetected, he invited 3 celebrated foreign radicals to the camp for talks on the prospects for world revolution.
The arrival of a series of tourists to the Bolivian army, that suggested that Che Guevara must be in the mountains, otherwise why else would they be here?
The arrival of the foreigners led the Bolivian military to step up patrols in the area. Within weeks, they had discovered the rebel camp. The rebels and their visitors managed to escape, but they left behind some glaring clues to their identity, including photographs of Guevara himself.
Machine gun, pistol, 9mm caliber. We have enough proof to say Che Guevara organized this kind of war, and he is still in the guerrillas in the area.
With the army on their trail, the rebels were forced to keep on the move. Near the hamlet of Bella Vista, Guevara left a contingent behind while he set off to escort the foreigners to safety. It was to be the last time the 2 groups saw each other. For months, the 2 groups wandered through the jungle, sometimes passing within minutes of each other. The rebels were openly expressing doubts over Guevara's leadership. Several had already defected.
Today we walked very little, owing to the poor condition of the path, which has been abandoned for many years. The Bolivians have announced Operation Cynthia to wipe us out in a few hours.
Guevara learned that the other contingent had been killed by Bolivian soldiers.
A nerve-wracking day which at one point seemed as if it would be our last. News of the death of the other group appears to be true, and it must now be considered eliminated. 46 soldiers passed right in front of us carrying knapsacks, and it seemed to take centuries for them to pass. Our refuge is no defense against an attack from above. If we are detected, the possibilities of escape are remote.
Gary Prado commanded the army unit assigned to track down the rebels. He remembers that as they drew close, Guevara's orders to his men became increasingly irrational.
They started moving along a part of the Valle Grande province where there are small hamlets, and they were moving on daylight, knowing that all these hamlets had telephone links and that the people were relaying reports to the army about their movements.
On October the 8th, Prado finally closed in on Guevara and his men.
I had 2 soldiers giving security to the command post. They were about 15 yards upwards on the side of the ravine. They saw these 2 guerrillas trying to exfiltrate themselves, trying to get away from the ravine. And they waited till they had them very close to them, and they gave them the word to halt. So I told them, drop your weapons. And then I started talking to them to identify them. One of them was clearly a foreigner. So I asked him, who are you? And he said, I'm Che Guevara, and I'm worth for you more alive than dead.
Guevara's dream of a world revolution was over. Some said it was the CIA, perhaps acting in conspiracy KGB, who had tracked him down. But the truth was that he had been defeated by his own bad judgment. The legendary military tactician had failed.
When Guevara arrived in Bolivia, he regarded the problems that had to be solved as technical ones. How do you get the arms? How do you keep going? Where do you get your food from? But he didn't seem to ask the much more important political questions. Are the peasants prepared to see us as part of their movement? Is there a movement at all? None of these questions were asked. It was as if the mere existence of a revolutionary corps could generate the conditions to make revolution possible. But of course, history tells us in the most tragic ways that that's not the way it happens.
Guevara's own tragedy was played out in the village of La Higuera on the 9th of October 1967. That day, he was the victim of the same kind of justice that he himself had handed out to the enemies of the Cuban Revolution 8 years earlier.
Escuché un estampido, una ráfaga. Inmediatamente me vino la idea de que se trataba del señor Guevara. No sé de qué manera, cuando yo acordé, salí yo afuera y me dirigí justamente donde yo estuve antes, a la escuela con él. De un brinco estuve dentro del curso y ya me encontré con el cadáver, que se encontraba con las piernas separadas y los brazos extendidos.
News of Guevara's execution spread quickly around the small town. As he lay dead, the peasants who had shunned him during his campaign came to pay their respects. At that moment, a new legend was born.
The image which became most common, which was most publicized and most often seen, was the one of Guevara's lying on a slab just after he had been killed by the Bolivian military. It's a white face, straggly hair, he's very thin, and maybe I'm imagining it, but I'm convinced that each time that image was reproduced, he became whiter, his hair longer, and the face became more and more like the image of Christ.
When he died, it was first a shock, because in a sense it was a setback which none of us had imagined, that we could actually lose something like that, especially Guevara, who seemed to be omnipotent, all-conquering. That the forces of the state in a place like Bolivia could actually vanquish him seemed almost impossible, a terrific shock to us, perhaps the first sign in the 60s that we could after all lose, that we didn't have to win everything.
Guevara's life, as an example of sacrifice and heroism, is an important and fine example. But the ideas that informed that battle and that activity were often naive, sometimes wrong, and didn't actually offer a model of how to make and rebuild a revolutionary movement to successive generations. Guevara symbolized the spirit and the desire to change the world, but didn't really leave behind very much in the way of a method as to how to do it.
Next on History Night, Cold War submarine adventures brings to light more of the extraordinary events of the Cuban Missile Crisis.